Christian Parenting.
Welcome to Pardon the Mess. I'm your host, Courtney DeFeo, and on this podcast, we talk about raising kids as Christian parents. It's so very important for me to honor God with my family and the 2 kids that He's given me. But honestly, it's not always neat or easy or tidy, but it's always worth it. So join us every week to laugh and learn together on this beautiful and messy journey of parenting. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. If you are listening to this on Thanksgiving Day as it comes out, then I don't know, you're a super fan, and I'm so pumped. So let me know. I feel like I should send you a prize or something, or at least a gold star. But happy Thanksgiving wherever you're listening to this. Maybe you're driving home. Maybe it's the next week. Maybe it's 2 weeks from now. But I just want to say I'm thankful for you guys. Y'all are so sweet. One day we need to have an event, a Pardon the Mess party, and everybody come together because y'all are just so kind. If I see you out in the world or you DM me encouragement. Side note, I told my kids the other day, I was like, it's in your Instagram inbox. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, they just have different language. So like, DM me. So I don't even know, but y'all come through my Instagram inbox sometimes and direct message me sweet things. And I hope I get back to every single one of you because there's nothing worse than having the courage to reach out to someone and they don't respond. I hope I haven't done that. But, I'm flustered. So here we are. Today's episode is me. You get me. And so I decided to take a break from guests just for this day and share about something that matters most to me. And so I'm in an interesting situation, as you know, as I look back over 18 years of parenting, there's a few things that bubble up that mattered a whole lot to our family. And so I just wanted to share some of those with you. I did talk about some of those in my first book. It's called In This House We Will Giggle. And I wrote that when the girls were really little, which is kind of funny, but I really still believe in it. But I wanted to come and share through that book just things I was learning as a young mom that Ron and I had set out and said, these are some of the virtues and values that are important to us as a family. We had marked them down and they were biblical. And we said, now, how do we do that in a super creative, experiential way so that the kids aren't like, oh, it's the worst to be a Christian. We have to be kind to people or we have to be patient. But how can we kind of sprinkle in like carrots into brownies? How can we bring virtues and values into our everyday life? So it's not like, a chore. It's more like this is how we do life as a family that loves Jesus, and let's come along for the adventure. And so the book has 12 virtues for every month of the year. And so the December one was generosity. And so I'm going to give you a little background there during the story and just then share some tips about as I look back, as we sought out early in their childhoods and early in our parenting career to make some of these things important to our family. What does it look like now? As I look back, I'm going to share with you some of those impacts and hope that you'll pray about it. And maybe over the Thanksgiving break, just to have time to even pray and pause and say, at the end of my journey as a parent, what did bubble up? What do I want to be the things that we're known for? And we can't do it all. And so I think that they should be based in the Bible. If you're listening to this, you're probably a Christian parent that believes the same, but maybe talk to your spouse and just kind of brainstorm and then say, now, how do we do that? How do we pray for that? We do that on Mondays, but how do we practically bring those things into our daily life? Okay, first of all, before we get to that, I know that you're like, that's awesome, but what do I shop for? Because I got to get some Christmas things under the tree. So as you know, at Christian Parenting, we've got a store over there and there's so many fun ideas over there on the Advent Guide, which I'll link to. There's also a Black Friday sale. So I have an Amazon shop and I just from time to time get asked about the same questions, like what devotional should I do for a girl? Or where did your kids get that dress or whatever. So I'm always putting things in there. So you can always check back there. I'm making a commitment to you to kind of get back to my Amazon shop and update it on some of the things. One, particularly for girls, my kids love pajamas. I mean, I'm kind of the generation of like an old t-shirt and some comfy pants, but they love a matching set. And I put some of those in that section. And then lake pajamas are expensive, but they are all the rage for these teenagers. So if you don't want to pay for lake pajamas, which we've done both, there is a dupe that I put in my Amazon shop and you can go check those out there. They're not as quality, of course, but they do the job and they look just as cute. So go check that out. So let's get into what matters most, generosity. And this is a talk. So I'm going to kind of go through through that guideline. But I was able to do this talk a couple weeks ago in New Braunfels. So hello to my friends. About 600 ladies came together for a beautiful event to kick off the Christmas season. So I did a version of this talk for them. I also did it at Prestonwood. And as I've been sitting with it the last couple weeks, I'm like, I got to share this with my Part of the Mess mom family because it's really important to me. And so the idea is that we should be a light in the community and that our kids should be a light to this world. And we know that we are not the light, right? So as we think about Christmas, light is mentioned like 400 times in the Bible. But here's a few things, a few verses that remind us that Jesus is actually the light of the world. We know that, but let's remind ourselves that. And there is, by the way, hope. If you're feeling darkness, if you're feeling stress, if you're feeling like the world's coming to an end, if you feel like your diagnosis or your family or your finances are so dark, just know that there is hope. I believe that, and the core of my being and my soul, that there is hope in Jesus. So John 8:12, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Psalm 27:1 says, the Lord is my light and he saves me. Why should I fear anyone? The Lord is my place of safety. Why should I be afraid? John 1:5 says, the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome the light. So it's saying there is darkness, but it will not overcome the light. So again, I believe this. I believe Jesus is the light of the world. But as a young mom, I started to wonder, like, how could I use this little light of mine, my talents, my life, my income, my time, and then this little family God's given me, these two girls, how could we be a part of shining God's light? And that idea of light just kept wrestling in my soul and in me. And I ended up starting a website probably 2011. Like they were little, they were 2 and 4, and it was called Little Light of Mine. And so you'll see where this is going. But I don't think that's just a Courtney thing. I think that's all of us. And so I don't know if you're coming here today, and I have felt that way, but as a mom, and if you're home many of your hours, you can start to feel like, do I have anything else to give to others? Am I even special anymore? You can kind of forget yourself during those years of motherhood. You may even think you're too old, or you're too young, or you're too broken or sinful. And I just want to remind you that truly God has a plan for all of us, and he can use me and you, ordinary folks, ordinary moms, to shine the light of the world in a way that it draws people back to him. I want to give you a little background of why, again, I am so passionate about this. But a little background. So I come from a long line of generous women. And if you've been around me for long, you know that I love and just admire my mom so much. She is still alive, and I don't live in the same town as her, but I just treasure her so much. And my dad was also a generous person and is amazing as well. But I had kind of a front row seat to watch how my mom did life and lived out her faith. And so a couple examples, write about this in the book, but there was a day, my brother was about 9 years younger, and he used to go to Subway after school. So that was like their ritual. They would pick him up from school, go to Subway, and I was already home from middle school. But my mom came home one day and said, hey, can you get in the car? We're going to go do something. I'm like, okay. So we jump in, we race over to the bank. She gets out a couple $100, and then she tells me to go take it in and hand it to the lady at Subway. And I'm like, what are we doing? She's like, well, when I was in there with Drew, she was crying, and I heard how much she needed to pay for this bill, and she couldn't pay it. And so let's just do it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it was so fun. And again, y'all, this wasn't a lecture saying we are about generosity. The Bible says it's better to give than receive. Like, she lived it out. Like, she did it. No matter how much she had, little or a lot, she lived it out. Other ways, there was a guy that used to cut our lawn, and she was friends with him. If you know my mom, we call her Mies. She's friends with everybody, but she noticed that his leaf blower had been stolen. And so I watched her do an on the ground marketing, GoFundMe, basically in-person campaign. And she had all the neighbors pull their resources together and bought him another one. And you should have seen his face and the hug to my mom. She did this through cereal. Y'all, if you came to my house as a kid, and many of you are remembering this, Kara, don't you remember? Aaron, don't you remember? If you came over, you said, oh, I love Trix, or I love Cheerios. She would get that cereal and have it in the top of the closet. So people had their cereal, but it wasn't the cereal. It was just the way she lived. It's like, I care about you. I'm going to be generous with my time, my home, my party skills. Like, she would host the sweetest showers and make people feel so seen. So know that I was raised in that way and saw it and was like, whatever that was, that's what I want to do for my kids because it greatly impacted my desire to be generous with everything that God's given me. Okay, next, I went to Chick-fil-A headquarters right after probably my second job. It was my second job, not probably. My first job was at a PR firm in Atlanta called Ketchum. That's where I met Ron. And then about 3 years after that, I started working at Chick-fil-A headquarters. And those 5 or 6 years was probably the most impactful like career years of my life because it was like, I don't know, I was around a company and people that saw bigger than what the company was about. So they sell chicken, as we know, and it's really good. But everybody in the building was like, we're actually about a corporate purpose that's much higher than that. We're going to glorify God. We're going to have a positive influence on everyone that comes into contact with us. And it was very clear as I got around other leaders and people that there was more going on than chicken. And it was like, how are we going to show up in the community? How are we going to love each other in the office? How are we going to do things that matter and be generous with all of that? And so got to walk that very closely. So one particular story I want to tell you. So David Salyers was my boss at Chick-fil-A, and he had a Christmas party. And back in the day, 18 years ago, the corporate office was smaller. So about 40 people in the marketing department. We went to his house and we got there and he was, he said, okay, we're going to do something different. He read us a devotional that was out of something he was reading, and it was about divine appointments and how God can use us in divine appointments. And they said, now here, split up into these groups, and I'm going to give you each, I don't even remember. Does anybody remember that's listening? It was probably a couple $100. He's like, I'm giving you this money instead of giving you gifts this year, and let's go see who God has in store for us. Let's pass it on. Let's be generous with what God's given us. So we go out and we all get so excited. We were like adding our own cash. So back in the day, we had cash in our wallets. Imagine that. But we started adding our own cash and then we prayed over it. And then we came all back together and told stories. And it was so cool. I will never forget it. I mean, I'm talking about it 20 years later, but some teams, they pulled up and said, we should pay for someone's gas. And they happened upon a lady who had $1 left for gas and she was crying. Then, we went to the fire station and said, how can we love on someone in your community? Do you know anyone that has any needs? And they're like, in fact, this family just lost their house. And so we go over there and it was so thrilling. And then fast forward with that same team, about 5 or 6 of us went to Ukraine back in the day when there wasn't a war, but we went to do a business seminar. That was the reason, quote, we went, but we were going to share about Jesus and teach young business leaders how to run a business like Chick-fil-A. And so we were over there and we would walk around with these interpreters. And so they were our English speaking friends that would help translate our talks into Russian and talk to the folks there. But I was walking with one of the girls one night and we were just talking to her and she said, I'm getting married soon. And I was like, well, tell me about your wedding. And she said, well, in Ukraine, we have much less money than the US. And so we have to pick. So you can get a dress and maybe photos, probably not a cake, but it's just really small. And your family may celebrate, but it's just really small. And that's just what we can do. So I remember my eyes lit up. I locked eyes with David Salyers, my boss. And we were like, okay, good. See you later. And the Underground Mall was about to close in like 5 minutes. So she went on her way back to her home and we were sprinting to find a place where we could get a card. We were so excited. It's like we didn't even have to talk. And so we went to get a card, we filled it with money, and we said, we want you to buy a wedding cake and have the best day ever of your wedding day. And I remember truly in that moment running through those underground malls and saying, whatever this is, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be in the center of God's will. I want to use whatever he's given me, whether it's time or money or encouragement or, just a few dollars. I want to do that so that people know, not that we're generous, but I think Masha was her name. I think Masha at the end of time knew there was something different about us. I mean, she translated our talks. So she knew it wasn't like, hey, Courtney is the rock star. I think in that moment when she opened that card later that she knew there's a God that sees me and loves me and provides for me. And months later, we got a card thanking us with a picture of her cutting her wedding cake and her dress in a professional photo. So, it was so fun. All right. Another thing that was super impactful to me, there was a Lifeway conference for moms. And this is all very fuzzy, but again, probably 18 years ago, 19, who knows? It's all a blur. Probably when Ella was, no, let me think. Ella was little. So I just stopped working at Chick-fil-A. I'm staying at home as a mom, but I felt God stirring this company called Little Light of Mine and Me. I had some products ideas like ABC scripture cards. I had a blog that I would do that like 3 people read. But at that conference, I remember walking by this, they had different booths, and I'm a sucker for shopping. I'm like, oh, I'll get that and that. But this particular booth had canvases, and verses were kind of laid in a format that it was like a chair or a lamp. And this particular one was a lamp, and it had the verse about shining God's light. And I grabbed that so quickly, thinking, God, you keep reminding me that this is the main theme. This is the verse of my life. So I was holding tight to it. I was crying because I felt like God was saying, keep walking. I'm showing you what you're supposed to do with your life. And so I was sat in the back row because I was a little embarrassed. I was crying. And I remember looking up, and Vicki Courtney was speaking, and there was about 400 or 500 people in the room. And I remember looking at her, and God didn't say audibly, but he nudged in my heart, this will be you one day. And I'm like, what? Like, I like to talk, obviously. But I'll speak to hundreds, I'll speak to thousands. And so I just kind of tucked that away in my heart. I went home, hung that canvas that I still have in my office. And here's what it said. And this is the Message version. I love it because it just like, I hope it speaks to you too. I know, like, you're like, well, this is nice. God spoke to you, but like, this isn't a Courtney mission. This is like an all in what God has designed for us. We're supposed to love God and love others with all of our hearts. So Matthew 5:14-16 says, here's another way to put it. You're here to be a light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. And now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. I love this last part because this isn't about a stage or a microphone. This is just being willing to just say, whatever you have for me, Lord. This is not the verse. It's not about a stage. It's not about a microphone. It is like, I am standing up tall in my faith and saying, this is what I'm about. So the last part of the verse says, keep open house. This is what my mom did. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. Does that do something for y'all? Like, I just love it. And it feels so simple. It feels like I can do that. I can do that as a mom that's hosting a play date. I can do that with the dining room hostess in Chick-fil-A and talk to them. I can do that with the lady sitting next to me at the soccer team. Like, I can keep an open house, open heart, and be generous with everything about my life. So fast forward, I started Little Light of Mine, started the product, started the blog. And at the time, I was really praying about, like, Lord, if you created me super innovative and creative, and you gave me and everybody specific gifts. And at Chick-fil-A, I used those specific gifts to help people fall in love with chicken. Like, we really did. It was so fun to work on the cows and be creative about it and fall in love with that brand. And I thought, if I can do that, could I help families in a creative way, help people fall in love with Jesus and fall in love with each other and families? And so that is the mission I set up on. So I was kind of practicing and seeing what that looked like. So I was like, all right, generosity is important. I already said that. It's biblical. It was one of our main 5, values that we valued as a family when we dedicated the kids. So how do I practically teach my kids to experience that and do that as little bitty people? So Christmas starts heading up, and I was kind of had this moment where I was watching them go, I want to get American Girl doll. I want to get a new Barbie. I want to get more toys. And I was like, oh, that's so natural and so American and so human. But I was like, what if we flip the switch? And what if our family not just like got rid of gifts, but what if our focus was different? What if all the hours that we're out running errands and doing life and getting our family gifts, like, what if we thought about what else we could do? Could we give and be generous in a way that people would find God? And so that just set me on to a mission. And because I don't do things small and I came from a corporate marketing background, I'm like, it's going to be called Light 'em Up. We're going to have handouts. We're going to have little printable gift tags. And so me and my best friend, Katie, like, this is what we did. We went around with our girls, and side note, this is crazy, but our girls were friends when they were babies and 2-year-olds. And fast forward 2 moves later, Katie's daughter, Emma Kate, and Ella are rooming together at Auburn next year. I mean, what in the world? But so back up, they were little bitty girls. We had Harper and Larson, 2, we had Ella and Emma Kate, 4 or 5, and we would go around town and just say, how do we light up this community with little bitty acts of kindness? Like, what are we doing already? So don't stress. We're not adding more to our Christmas plate. What are you already doing? Where are you already going? And how do we do that? And then we brainstormed, girls, who does something for us every day, right around our house in a mile? Who does something for us that we, that needs things that gets overlooked. And so we started off and it was like we could not get enough. So we would go to, a store, and if there was a little like gumball machine, we'd tape quarters to the top and giggle and run off. We would write sidewalk chalk in the morning and surprise our neighbor that said, "Have a nice day." We went and got flowers and we hid them in the mailbox and put a note that said, "Thanks for picking up our mail. Merry Christmas." We did signs, posters on the trash can, and we just said, "Thanks for all you do for us." We would go through Chick-fil-A every day because we had toddlers. And so we would hand out candy canes with little tags to the person at the window and say, "Thank you so much." I think they're on the site. There's a link to it, but it's called lightemupacts.com. But there's all these little gift tags, and it's important for you to know, like, as much as I'm a marketer and as much as I like things to go viral, that was not my intent. My intent was like, I want generosity to soak so deep in the hearts of my kids that they know what it feels like. They don't just get a lecture, they know what it feels like, and it's fun. Hence, in this house, we will giggle. So we went around, and the tags, I will have you know, like, they didn't say, "Hope you enjoyed your candy cane. Follow me according to Feo." No, there was no name. It was like, "Hey, it's better to give than receive. We hope you enjoy this little treat." And then one time we paid for Starbucks for people, and I went back later in the day, and the lady's like, "That kept going like 40 cars." And we would hand a piece of a paper to people that said, "Surprise." What did it say? Something like, "Surprise. We hope this little surprise lit up your heart and blessed you today." And so just simple. I will also say that putting kids first, people just soften. Like, the world is really like skeptical and hard. And if I had walked up to somebody in the mall with a candy cane, which we totally went through the mall in a double stroller, but if I had walked up to the security guard or the girl working at, the Limited and said, "Hey, I've got this candy cane," they'll be like, "What are you selling? And does that have anthrax on it?" But sending two little girls with like ruffled leggings and running up to people saying, "Merry Christmas," and just handing it to people, or we would go see Santa and bring him a gift versus like getting something from him. And y'all, it was thrilling. And so I put it on my website. It's so long-winded. I blogged about it. I posted stuff, and it was like, I am hooked. There is a secret sauce here about knowing what's biblical, what God wants us to do, and then sneaking it in like a family adventure so that it becomes a part of who we are. And so fast forward, we are still doing things. It looks different. And I'll try to give you some ideas later about how to do that with teens. But wherever your kids are, like, start doing it. And what I learned was everybody else wanted ideas like this. Like, Pinterest back in the day was like where you posted things, and it went viral like in 2 days. And there was people in Dubai putting signs on their trash can, and people in London and California, and friends I went to high school with are like, "Thank you for giving me something that brings our heart back to the meaning of Christmas, that we can talk about Jesus in a way. We can do this as we're doing life and errands." And I will say, pause here. So if you've got a personality like my sister is generous and kind, but she does not like a lot of extra to-dos. I am like, go, 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 stay busy all day. So she did one of the ideas that first Christmas. She made some Christmas cookies with the boys, talked to them about generosity, and then went to the fire station and with the boys and dropped it off. And so don't think I'm saying, "Hey, add these many things." I'm saying, if generosity is important, how could you start practicing that with your kids? And many of you probably already do this at Christmas. And then how do you do that throughout the year as well? This podcast is proudly part of the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Christian Parenting's mission is to equip parents with the tools that they need to confidently raise the next generation of culture-changing Christians. And right now, that feels more important than ever. We would love for you to join us in this crucial mission by joining our community of monthly donors. Monthly donations are essential to ministries like Christian Parenting because they help us to plan for the year ahead and create the best content possible. Content like this podcast, printed products, digital guides, and even more like online articles. Your recurring gift, whether it's $5, $10, $25, or even $50 a month, this will help Christian Parenting reach even more parents around the world, encouraging them to be the perfectly imperfect parents God created them to be. To set up your recurring gift, you can go to cpgive.org. That's cpgive.org. Thank you so much for your support and your partnership. So let me see a couple stories. So one of those, I could tell you stories all day. One of those was we were living in Orlando at the time. It was super, super hot. Like it's always hot. And so we were driving past a construction place and I was like, girls, let's go get them cold drinks. So we went and got cold Gatorades and all that. And we pulled up to the construction site and I just handed them a bag and said, these are for you. I hope you have a great day. Merry Christmas, and ran off. And we were trying to run because I wanted the girls to know that this isn't about us getting the glory. It's always about God and what he's going to do with it. We don't need the praise. We don't need the reaction. We don't need someone posting our picture. So we got in the car and they loved the sneaky thing. They thought we were like doing illegal things. So we'd sneak in the car and the foreman comes running over. He's like a 60-something-year-old guy. And he said, I've been in construction 40 years and no one has ever done something like this for us. I just don't even know what to say. And I said, oh, you're so welcome. And he said, why? Like, that's the question. Why are you doing this? I said, well, I'm trying to teach my kids that it's better to give than receive. And it's kind of a biblical thing for us. And he just like was in shock and I drove off. And so I just love that these little moments of kindness can actually plant seeds in people's life to say, like, we see you. I didn't think anyone saw me. I'm so tired. Do I even matter? And we get to be a part of sending that message to them. And then God's responsible for the outcome. I don't know if they became Christians. I don't know if they paid it forward. I don't know if they knew my name. It's okay. But my kids experienced this. So I asked Larson, I said, do you remember? I mean, we've been doing this our whole lives, like in all kinds of ways. But I said, do you ever remember the ones when we were little? And she said, I remember the dollar store. And I just laughed because it was eventful. So we go to the dollar store and we made little baggies and we put gifts, like little gift tags in there. Again, this is all on the site, but just listen to the stories. But we put little gift tags in there that said, surprise, Merry Christmas, thought you would like a treat. And we hid $1.05 or whatever the tax was. So $1 and some change. And we taped the little Ziploc baggies all through the dollar store. And we were like running because the manager kind of sniffed us out. We were giggling and we would go to the next. And I had one of Ella's friends with me, but we would go to the next aisle and hide him behind a toy and hide him behind a thing of flour. And then we run out as before we get caught. And they were like, probably 20 bags, not a whole lot. And so we get out to the car. In Orlando, there's a ton of homeless people. And so they're everywhere. And it just became part of Light 'em Up as well, is how there's many stories there, but this particular lady came up to the window and said, can I wash your window for some money? I need lunch. And I said, you know what? Not today. I'm actually out of cash, but if you go in the dollar store and sneak through there, I've hidden some dollars in there. And her eyes got all big. And the girls at first were like, no, Mom, she's not who's supposed to find it. Some kids are. And I'm like, guys, it does not matter. We follow through and we're obedient and we'll see what happens. It's not up to us. So that was a fun one. All right. So I want to move on and just give you 3 quick tips. Okay. So the first tip is make room. So in Joy to the World, and it says, joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her king. Let every heart prepare him room. And that's like one line really always challenges me because like I said, I'm busy. I edge out God. I edge out others. I get into my Christmas list. I get into my particular family, which isn't bad. We want those traditions, but I tend to be overcommitted. And so it's funny saying this going into December, you're like, I'm already committed, but are you? Like, could we eliminate something? Could we adjust, refocus? And I always tell people, and I had to do this and I still have to, but look at your bank account and your calendar. It reveals so much of where our priorities are. And as a young mom, if you looked at my bank account, you would have said, whoa, she is about the mission and ministry of smock dresses. I was obsessed. Like, I could not stop shopping. I loved them in matching. I mean, hello, Southern girl. Loved having them in matching outfits. And I was like shopping like a year ahead, like, oh, this is what they're wearing Easter. Okay, this is their summer dress. And it wasn't bad. But what majority of my time was looking like was that I'm focused on how cute they are, which again, isn't bad. And so this particular Light 'em Up activity showed me that we can just flip the switch and just refocus things we're already doing and then have the permission to cut things. So I'm just going to say permission. You can skip a Christmas party. You don't have to do it. You can also wear the same thing as you did last year. You don't have to have a brand new epic outfit. You can use the same bows on your trees. I mean, I've been watching bow tutorials on TikTok all day long. Like, I need to like reinvent all the bows. You can order Cracker Barrel for the meal. My mom said one year, y'all, I'm not making all the sides. I mean, she's been cooking for us for like 50 years. And I'm so proud of her for saying, you know what? Can one of y'all run through Cracker Barrel and get all the sides? I'll do the turkey. And it has given her so much freedom. And you know what? It's tastes delicious. You can take a pause. All the church people are going to kill me, but you really can take a pause from an intensive volunteer role that is literally draining you and taking away time to do the things God's calling you to do. You can put some boundaries. Sorry, families. There's extended families. There's expectations. Put boundaries around those. Y'all, and this was before the elf was like the thing. So put this on AirPods if your kids are in the car, but we punted the elf. Little days, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so it wasn't as like social suicide then as it is now, but I was like, I don't have time for the elf. You can quit your job. I'm just kidding. You probably can. But I will remind you that many good and godly things can be distractions, and they may be good things, but they're not the very best things or the holy things. And so you got to figure that out for you. You got to pray like, Lord, my plate is full. My plate is full with this child, with my aging parent. I can't add anything else, but I feel like there's no margin. There's no room in my holiday spirit to feel you, holiday season, to interact with you, to spend time in your word. And it may not be something like light him up, but just let's make room for Jesus. All right. So second thing is stay close. My advice to you would be, and as much as I love an international trip and I love going on doing things for people around the world, as a young mom, you can feel trapped to your home, and it's okay. It's okay. You got to be home a lot and near home a lot, but there are people hurting you could even just draw a 2-mile circle on a map around your house. I mean, who has maps, but like virtually or just mentally go like, who right around my house every day is hurting or struggling? And so these are the questions we asked. And as we stayed close in those little years, Lord, who do you want us as the DeFeo family and our friends Katie and Harper and Emma Kate, who do you want us to love on right around our homes? Who needs our appreciation and gratitude? And I really did find out before you're like, oh, that's nice. You must have been rich. Like, no, it doesn't matter what you give, how often you go, how many people you reach. It's really like pausing and saying, God, who do you want us specifically to interact with, to remind them that they are seen and they are loved, and the God who made them wants to remind them of that. So I asked my friends, I asked many of you online, I'm like, has this ever happened to you? Because I know what happens, but I wanted to ask you all, like, can you name a time that someone did something so simple that seemed easy, that seemed just so random to them, that actually was a moment you'll never forget, that you felt like God himself was doing the thing? And these are some of the ideas that came through. One of my friends said she was going through a divorce. A group of unknown women from the church left care packages on her doorstep for the 12 days of Christmas. So her kids had activities when she could not pull herself together. She said, I cried every day that I opened that door. She said, another friend said she was 8 months pregnant. Her husband got diagnosed with cancer, and then he was laid off from his job. She was crying, and he was crying all the way through church. And then an older couple walked up and handed them $100 and said, I don't know what you're going through, but God told us to give you that. I mean, what? Okay, another one. Friend lost her baby to miscarriage. A family invited her and her husband to their lake house the very week the baby would have been born. I mean, y'all, these ideas are so simple, but when they're from Jesus, it is like Jesus himself walked in and held that mama who was going to be mourning her miscarriage and gave her a place to do that. I mean, you just can't beat it. I love this stuff. All right, another friend of mine had cancer. She said her community showed up to clean her house, raise funds, sent flowers, and on and on. Another one of my friends, really good friends, her husband's been chronically ill and in and out of the hospital. Her friends took turns and they did their yard work for over a year. And she said it just meant so much to her. Like, she loved her garden and she didn't have time, and her husband certainly did have time to take care of this yard. So I want to pause here and just recognize maybe the person that is like, I do this all the time and no one does it for me. And I get that. I'm a lifelong giver, doer, server. And there can be times that you're like, forget it. Like I have to check my motive to say, like, Lord, am I helping and serving so that I win favor, so that I look like a good and godly girl, so that I show up and do the things people, quote, expect me to do at the church or at the school? So that may be a conversation with the Lord to be like, Lord, just strip everything from me. Show me not all the things I need to stay busy doing for others, but who specifically? What is one thing? And let's follow your lead versus our guilt or our expectations of ourselves. And then pray like, Lord, I'm feeling super unseen. Would you meet my needs in this area? And then the last piece, of this that is not in my script, but I really want to say to you, like, God can read minds, but your friends cannot. Let me say that again. God can read minds, but your friends cannot. And so to give me as your friend an opportunity to show up, like I need to know, and maybe I'm not the person to fill every need, but some of my friends have been vulnerable enough to say, hey, when my husband's in the hospital, I'm so scared to sit alone. And because they shared their vulnerable fear, it allowed me to know specifically where I could show up and sit with them at the hospital. Instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to send you $500 worth of meals. And they're like, we don't need meals. Like, we don't need meals, but I need someone in the hospital with me. It's also not on you. I'm going to talk out both sides of my mouth, but if you're going through the hardest time of your life, it is also not your job to figure out your needs for other people. That is where God comes in. So I want to say the last thing, number 3, first was make room. Second was just stay close. And then third is listen for him. And this is where the sweet spot of life is. And it's like, hey, God knows all the different players. He knows where you have needs, and you don't have to just put that out in a request list and like a sign up genius and say, I need someone to wash my car on Tuesday, someone to do my yard work on Wednesday, and I actually need someone to just give me a hug. I mean, when Ron had cancer a few years ago, one of my friends, Mandy, hugged me so tight and said no words that it literally felt like Jesus came down and hugged me himself. And so guys, no, he's got this figured out, and we don't have to be a part of that work in the world through generosity. I'm going to tell you a story. But first I want to say, like, if God is calling you to quit every Bible study and luncheon and sit with your aging mom, do that. Listen to his voice above all opinions and have the courage to obey, no matter what people think. If God is calling you to open your home to middle schoolers, but you're terrified, I get that. I'm with high schoolers and I feel very uncool, but do that. Listen to his voice and watch what he does with your little bit of yes, your little bit of time, your little bit of money, like your little bit of yes. He will fill in the gaps in ways you have no idea. If God puts someone on your heart, do not miss it. It will feel awkward. It will feel random. And it's most likely, the more awkward, the more random, it's most likely him. Text them. Don't feel dumb. Just say, hey, I just have you on my heart today. Are you okay? Can I pray for anything? What's going on? And like, I can't tell you how many times I do that. And it is like, I want to do it every day because it is always Jesus when he prompts my heart to reach out to someone. Okay. So a last thing I'll say before the story is don't overthink it. Like, it's simple, and don't worry if it doesn't land. One time we were opening doors for people at the mall for 30 minutes, and it was just so funny. The girls were like, no one likes us. And so just try stuff and don't expect this glorious God story every time. We're in it to consistently shine the light of Jesus in a way that God becomes known and people feel seen and loved. And it's not about the credit that we get. So try stuff, even if you mess up, even if you take the non-gluten-free thing to the gluten-free people, like, they know your hearts. God knows your hearts. So let me end with this story that kind of encapsulates everything. And if you've heard me speak, you've heard me tell the story, but it's worth sharing it again. I think I've even shared it on here. But so Charlie is a little boy that did Light Him Up growing up with us. And he told his mom for his 10th birthday. And every time I tell this, the details get a little fuzzy because it's been so long. So don't quote me on the numbers, but you'll get the point. And hey, Stacy, by the way, you and your family have always been amazing. And I pray Charlie's still lighting up the world out there. But Charlie was 10. And he was turning 10. And for his birthday, he said, Mom, I want to do acts of kindness like we did for Light Him Up. She said, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. So he made a list of exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to the Humane Society and take a toy. And he wanted to go to the park and do this thing. Well, they got to and she gave him a budget and said, okay, here's the budget you have to work with. And so they got to number 9 and they went to the grocery store and he bought flowers and he wanted to hand them out to somebody. And so he's standing by the door. Stacy's hiding on the other side. The little brother's watching. And this lady comes out and he hands the flowers to her. And he says, hi, I'm Charlie. I want to do 10 acts of kindness for my 10th birthday. And I'm here to light up, the world or something. I have the script somewhere. And I wanted to give you flowers. You're my number 9. And she said, no, thank you. Y'all. She said, no, thank you. And kept walking. I don't have enough Jesus in me to not pummel someone that hurts my kid. I would have been like, excuse me, you're taking the flowers. But Stacy and her Jesus-ness and strength and just wisdom paused and said, you know what, Charlie? that wasn't the one. And so let's pray and just find a way that we find the one that's supposed to get these flowers. And so he did, and he took it very seriously. He was watching and looking at people. People would pass him. And then she's like, oh my word, like, how long are we going to be here? So finally you see him moving and he goes towards this lady and said, same thing. Hi, I'm Charlie. I want to do 10 acts of kindness for, my 10th birthday, and I wanted to give you flowers today. And she paused and hugged him and just couldn't believe it. Like we would be in shock. Like, thank you, Charlie. So they're marching out to the car. The lady goes to her car. They're headed to their car. And he said, Mom, I only have I think it was $1 or $3. I only just have this left for our last one. And she said, it's okay. Like, we still can do something with that. And so right as he's saying that, and don't miss this, right as he is expressing a need on his heart, the lady who he just blessed walks up. Like, you cannot script this. You cannot tell me that Jesus is not real, that he is not living in the hearts of people age 10, and up to adults. So she walks around the corner and gives me chills every time. And she said, Charlie, I just wanted to thank you one more time and tell you that my husband died months ago and I haven't received flowers in so long. Hugs Charlie. They're in shock. And then she hands him $20 and said, here's something to go bless the next person. Y'all, this story I cannot stop telling because it is such a beautiful example of how God works through generosity. And as I look back, it is just such a perfect encapsulation of what we talked about. There was room in their hearts and their lives to be kind and generous. They were close. They were at the grocery store down the road. And then Charlie at age 10 was listening to who God wanted him to give flowers to. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. And so I hope this encourages you today. I hope you go just even print the list and just have these conversations with your kids. And I can honestly say, looking back over 18 years, the generous moments are like time together as a family serving at Lighthouse, our moments when we saw someone in our lives that had a need and we kind of snuck around and made that happen. We've given flights to people. We have, gone and picked up a girl when their family had a death and the family said, you're spending the night with me. And so, I could name thing after thing, but I think if you asked my girls, they would say generosity is something they want to emulate in their family. And my girls, by the grace of God, and because of their grandmother and the family that they've lived in, they believe Jesus is real. And they believe that you can experience Jesus through generosity. And they live their lives like this. Not all the time. They're teenagers. They have their Christmas list. But put in a room and put in a situation, they have radar eyes that are Jesus given, that they look around and say, Lord, who needs to know they are loved? Who needs to feel they are appreciated and seen in our lives? And then they go do that thing. And so be encouraged. I want to pray for us. And then I just want to I hope you listen to this with your kids on the way home and print out the list. You can pull it up at lightemupacts.com. There's 100 ideas. And again, you don't have to do all of them, but ask them and let God speak to your kids' hearts and say, what is one thing you want to do for someone else during this holiday season? All right, let me pray for us. Lord, thank you for just this microphone and this way to connect with other families, to share what you have done in our lives. I am the product of an incredibly generous upbringing, of a family that was generous, of church women that prayed for us, of just a role model that model what does it look like when God, you say something is important in your word, you command us to do it. What does that look like to actually go do it? Instead of knowing the verse, what does it look like to go give, and how that's better than receiving, and how through generosity, Lord, you are revealed to people in the most incredible way. It's supernatural. It is your spirit working through our kids and our lives. And so I thank you for that. Lord, I pray right now that you will open every one of our hearts and eyes to see our community differently, that we will not get stuck in despair or darkness or skepticism, that we would see that we are a part of your plan, no matter who is leading our communities or our country or our churches, that we are part of the plan. We get to go out and do this, and that is what you've called us to do, to love you and love others. So Lord, I pray for these families. I'm thankful on this Thanksgiving Day for them, that they are leading their families with you in mind. Pray that you will bless actually, Lord, would you do something miraculous in these little moments, that there's these little yeses, and that these moms will have a story like Charlie's to hang on to say, I know there is a God. I saw him speak to you. And it will seal something in the hearts of these kids and these families as they go about this Christmas season. We thank you for your son. We thank you for all that Jesus has done in our lives. And we love you so much, Jesus. Amen. hope you enjoyed this episode of Pardon the Mess. As always, we've got more encouragement and resources over at christianparenting.org. And you can also stay connected with us on social media at Pardon the Mess. And if you like this episode, I'd love for you to do two things. Press follow on whatever podcast platform you love, and also be sure to leave a rating so other parents can find us. Remember, you're never alone in this beautiful mess of parenting.